A small-town cafe owner stood up for motorcycle riders when every other business refused them service. Her act of defiance nearly destroyed her livelihood, but word travels fast in the biker community. This is Hammer and Tails. Let's get started. Linda Clark wiped down the same coffee-stained counter for the third time that morning, watching Main Street through the window of her cafe. At 42, she'd been running Clark's family restaurant for 8 years, ever since her father passed and left her the business that had fed Millfield for 3 decades. The morning rush, if you could call 6 customers a rush, had ended an hour ago. Linda counted the bills in the register and felt her stomach tighten. $37, barely enough to cover this week's food order, and the rent was due Friday. The cafe that had once been the heart of Millfield was slowly dying, one empty table at a time. Linda walked to the kitchen and stared at the stack of overdue bills held down by a coffee mug. Electric company final notice. Food supplier demanding payment on delivery. Insurance premium past due. She'd already let her part-time waitress go last month, and her cook had quit when she couldn't guarantee his hours. Main Street wasn't what it used to be. Half the storefronts were empty, victims of the new highway that bypassed the town completely. The customers who remained were mostly older folks on fixed incomes, nursing single cups of coffee for hours and leaving small tips they couldn't really afford. Linda had grown up in this cafe, doing homework at table 6 while her parents worked 14-hour days. She'd learned to cook at her mother's side, memorized every regular's order, and promised her dying father she'd keep the family business alive. That promise was getting harder to keep every month. The bell above the door chimed, and Linda looked up hopefully. Instead of customers, she saw Betty Harrison from the town council, flanked by Tom Walsh from the Chamber of Commerce. Their expressions told Linda this wasn't a social visit. "Linda, we need to talk," Betty said, settling her considerable bulk into a booth. "Coffee?" Linda asked, already reaching for the pot. "This is business," Tom said, declining the offer. "We've been hearing some concerns about your establishment." Linda set down the coffee pot. "What kind of concerns?" Betty pulled out a folder and spread several papers on the table. "These are incident reports from other towns. Motorcycle clubs causing trouble at restaurants and bars, property damage, fights, intimidation of other customers." "What does that have to do with my cafe?" "We want to make sure Millfield doesn't have those problems," Tom said. "Most businesses in the area have adopted a no-colors policy. No motorcycle club patches, no gang insignia." Linda felt her temper rising. "Gang insignia? Tom, this is a restaurant, not a courthouse." "It's about maintaining community standards," Betty said, "keeping Millfield family-friendly. By discriminating against paying customers, by protecting the customers we have," Tom replied. "Linda, your father built this place on family values. Motorcycle clubs don't exactly fit that image." Linda thought about her father, who'd served everyone from bank presidents to homeless veterans without question. "My father served food to anyone who could pay for it. That was his family value." Betty's expression hardened. "We're strongly recommending that all Main Street businesses adopt the no-colors policy for the good of the community. And if I don't?" "Then you'll be on your own when problems arise," Tom said. "Don't expect the council's support if things go bad." After they left, Linda stared at the papers they'd left behind. Photos of damaged restaurants, police reports, insurance claims, all designed to scare her into compliance. But Linda had never been good at backing down from bullies. What she didn't know was that her decision would soon be tested in ways she never imagined. Saturday afternoon brought an unusual sound to Main Street, the rumble of multiple motorcycle engines. Linda looked up from her prep work to see a group of riders pulling up outside her cafe. 8 motorcycles, their chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun. The riders dismounted and removed their helmets, revealing men and women of various ages, all wearing leather vests with patches that identified them as members of the Raven Motorcycle Club. Their presence on quiet Main Street drew stares from other pedestrians, some of whom quickly crossed to the opposite sidewalk. Linda watched through the window as the group approached her door. The leader was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She wore the president's patch with the casual authority of someone comfortable with leadership. The bell chimed as they entered, and Linda felt the atmosphere in her cafe shift. The three other customers, regulars who'd been nursing coffee and sharing gossip, suddenly found their newspapers very interesting. "Afternoon," the woman said, approaching the counter. "We were hoping to get some lunch. Heard you serve good food here." Linda noticed the way the woman phrased it as a question, the slight uncertainty that suggested they'd been turned away before. "Best home cooking in 3 counties," Linda replied with a smile. "Take any table you like." Relief flashed across the woman's face. "Thank you. I'm Janet, by the way." "Linda, and welcome to Clark's Family Restaurant." As the group settled into 2 tables, Linda could feel tension radiating from her other customers. Mrs. Chen kept glancing nervously at the bikers while Mr. Peterson gripped his coffee cup like it might offer protection. Linda ignored the stares and approached the bikers' tables with menus and water glasses. "First time in Millfield?" she asked. "We're passing through on our way to a rally in Colorado," Janet explained. "Stopped at 3 other places on Main Street. They all said they weren't serving lunch." Linda knew that wasn't true. She'd seen people eating at those establishments all morning. Among the group, Linda noticed a young man who looked barely old enough to drink, nervously adjusting his leather vest. "First time wearing colors?" she asked kindly. He blushed. "Is it that obvious? I'm Tyler. Just got patched in last month." "Everyone's got to start somewhere," Linda said. "What brings you to motorcycle clubs?" "My dad was in the army with Cole here." Tyler gestured to a stocky man with graying temples and multiple military tattoos. "When Dad passed, Cole looked out for me. Got me into mechanics, helped me find my way." Cole spoke up with a gravelly voice that suggested years of smoking and highway wind. "Kid's got golden hands with engines. Fixed a stranded family's minivan last week, wouldn't take a dime for it." "Well, you're welcome here," Linda told Tyler. "Today's special is meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans. Made it fresh this morning." "Sounds perfect," said Cole. Linda took their orders and headed to the kitchen, aware that she was being watched by both her regular customers and her new ones. Mrs. Chen got up and left money on her table, hurrying out without her usual goodbye. Mr. Peterson followed a few minutes later. By the time Linda served the bikers their food, she was alone with them in the cafe. "Seems like we scared off your other customers," Janet said apologetically. "Their loss," Linda replied. "Food's better without the judgment anyway." Janet studied Linda's face. "You're not worried about serving us?" "Should I be?" "Some people think so." Linda gestured around her nearly empty restaurant. "Looks like I need all the customers I can get." The bikers ate their meals and complimented the food enthusiastically. They were polite, tipped well, and cleaned up after themselves. Tyler was especially impressed with the homemade pie, asking for the recipe to send to his grandmother. When they left, Janet shook Linda's hand. "Thank you for treating us like people instead of problems." "You are people," Linda said simply. But Linda had no idea that her simple act of hospitality was about to make her a target. Monday morning brought more visitors to the cafe, but these weren't customers. Donald Hayes, who owned the hardware store, burst through the door like a man on a mission. "Linda, what were you thinking Saturday?" "I was thinking about serving lunch to paying customers." "Those weren't customers. Those were gang members. They were motorcycle club members who ordered food and paid their bill." Donald's face reddened. "Do you know what they're going to think? That Millfield welcomes that element?" "What element?" "People who ride motorcycles." "You know what I mean." Before Linda could respond, Susan Parker from the flower shop joined them, followed by Mike Torres from the barber shop. Soon, half the Main Street business owners were crowded into her cafe, all talking at once. "We heard about Saturday," Susan said. "We're concerned." "About what?" "About the precedent you're setting," Mike replied. If word gets out that bikers are welcome here, more will come. Good, I could use the business. Linda, be reasonable, Donald said. These motorcycle clubs bring trouble wherever they go. Fights, drugs, intimidation. The people I served were perfectly polite. This time. What about next time? What about it? Susan stepped forward. We've talked to the other business owners. If you continue serving motorcycle clubs, we'll have to distance ourselves from your establishment. Linda felt anger building in her chest. Are you threatening to boycott my restaurant? We're protecting our community, Mike said. By discriminating against people based on what they wear. By maintaining standards, Donald replied. After they left, Linda sat alone in her empty cafe, processing what had just happened. Her own neighbors, people she'd known for years, were threatening to destroy her business unless she refused service to certain customers. The phone rang, and Linda answered automatically. Clark's Family Restaurant. Linda, it's Betty Harrison. I heard about the meeting this morning. News travels fast. We're scheduling a town council meeting for Wednesday night to discuss the motorcycle club situation. What situation? They bought lunch and left. The situation of whether Millfield wants to become known as a place that welcomes motorcycle gangs. Motorcycle clubs, Betty. And they're welcome in my restaurant. Then you'll be explaining that to the council. 7 o'clock, town hall. The line went dead, and Linda stared at the phone. In less than 48 hours, serving lunch to 8 polite customers had turned her into a pariah in her own town. What Linda didn't realize was that her troubles were just beginning. Wednesday night, the Millfield town hall was packed. Linda had never seen so many people at a council meeting, and she recognized most of them as business owners and longtime residents. She sat in the front row, feeling like a defendant awaiting sentencing. Betty Harrison called the meeting to order and got straight to the point. We're here to discuss the incident at Clark's Family Restaurant this past Saturday when the establishment served members of a motorcycle gang. Motorcycle club, Linda corrected from her seat. The distinction is irrelevant, Betty replied. What matters is that word could spread that Millfield welcomes this element. Donald Hayes stood up. I've done some research on these Raven Motorcycle Club people. They've been involved in several incidents across the state. Bar fights, property damage, intimidation of other customers. Did they cause any problems in my restaurant? Linda asked. That's not the point. That's exactly the point. Tom Walsh stood up. Linda, we understand you need customers, but we can't risk the safety and reputation of our entire community for the sake of your business. My business that's been part of this community for 30 years. Your business that's now putting the community at risk, Betty said. The meeting continued for 2 hours, with speaker after speaker explaining why Linda's decision to serve the bikers was dangerous and irresponsible. No one mentioned that the bikers had caused no trouble, tipped well, or been perfectly polite. Finally, Betty called for a vote on Resolution 23A, recommending that all Main Street businesses adopt a no-colors policy prohibiting service to motorcycle club members. The vote was unanimous, except for Linda, who wasn't allowed to vote anyway. As the meeting ended, Linda found herself surrounded by people offering fake sympathy and real ultimatums. It's nothing personal, Susan Parker said, but we have to protect our families. By discriminating against people you've never met, by learning from other communities' mistakes. Linda drove home that night knowing her neighbors had just declared war on her business. The question was whether she had the strength to fight back. What she didn't know was that her fight was about to attract attention from people who understood what it meant to stand on principle. The first week of the boycott hit Linda like a sledgehammer. Business dropped by 70% as the word spread through Millfield's tight-knit community. Regular customers stopped coming, citing pressure from friends and family. The morning coffee crowd dwindled to 2 elderly men who remembered Linda's parents. By Thursday of that first week, Linda sat in her darkened cafe because she couldn't afford to pay the electric bill. The power company had agreed to give her until Monday, but only because she'd begged them over the phone. Her food supplier called Friday morning. "Linda, I'm sorry, but we need payment on delivery from now on. No more credit." "How am I supposed to run a restaurant without credit?" "I wish I could help, but my boss says you're a risk now." Linda hung up and stared at her empty refrigerator. She had enough food for maybe 2 days of limited service. The second week brought even more devastating news. Her insurance company called to inform her that several complaints had been filed about her establishment being a public safety risk. Her premiums would triple effective immediately. Linda's sister called from Phoenix again. "Linda, you can't win this fight. Come stay with us until you figure out what's next." "I'm not giving up." "You're going to lose everything." "Maybe, but I'm not backing down." The low point came on Thursday morning of the second week when Linda opened the cafe to find graffiti sprayed across her front window. "Biker lover" in red paint. She spent 2 hours scrubbing it off while people walked past without offering to help. That afternoon, as Linda sat alone in her empty restaurant, counting the $17 in her register, she heard the familiar rumble of motorcycle engines outside. Through her freshly cleaned window, she saw Janet and 5 other Raven MC members parking their bikes. They entered quietly, as if aware of the hostility their presence might create. "We heard about the trouble," Janet said without preamble. "Word travels fast. In our community it does. We also heard about the boycott." Linda shrugged. "I've had quieter weeks." Cole, the veteran with the gravelly voice, looked around the empty restaurant. "This is our fault. We should have kept riding." "No," Linda said firmly. "You should have been welcome anywhere you wanted to eat. That's what America's supposed to be about." Janet studied Linda's face. "You're really willing to lose your business over this?" "I'm really willing to stand up for what's right." Tyler, the young mechanic, pulled out his wallet. "We want to help. Maybe we could prepay for meals or—" "I appreciate the offer, but I can't take charity." "It's not charity," Cole said. "It's loyalty. There's something you should know. We've been spreading the word about your place, about what you did for us." "What do you mean?" "The writing community talks," Janet explained. "When someone treats us with respect, especially when it costs them something, that story gets shared." And you're about to find out what loyalty means to people like us." But Linda had no idea that the motorcycle community's version of loyalty was about to transform her life in ways she never imagined. The first sign came on the third Saturday after the boycott began. Linda arrived at the cafe to find 6 motorcycles already parked outside, then 12, then 20. By noon, Main Street was lined with motorcycles for 3 blocks in each direction. Bikers filled every seat in the cafe, with more waiting outside. Linda had never served so many people in a single day, let alone a single morning. "Where did you all come from?" she asked Janet, who was helping coordinate the crowd. "Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas. Word got out about the cafe owner who stood up for bikers. People wanted to see for themselves." Linda worked frantically to keep up with orders, running out of food twice and sending Cole to the grocery store for emergency supplies. She'd never been so busy or so exhausted. Tyler had appointed himself as unofficial assistant, bussing tables and helping in the kitchen with the skill of someone who understood hard work. "You don't have to do this," Linda told him as he washed dishes. "Yes, I do. You stood up for us when nobody else would." The other Main Street business owners watched from their windows as hundreds of bikers filled their usually quiet town. Some looked worried, others looked calculating, especially when they saw the long lines at the gas station and the convenience store. By evening, Linda had made more money in one day than she typically made in a good month. The cash register was full, the tip jar overflowing, and she'd received more compliments on her food than she'd heard in years. "This can't last," she told Janet as they cleaned up after the crowd. "You're right," Janet agreed. "It's going to get bigger." Janet wasn't exaggerating. Word of Linda's stand spread through motorcycle communities across 5 states. Riders posted about Clark's family restaurant on forums and social media. The cafe became a symbol of businesses that treated bikers with respect. The following weekend brought even more riders. Linda hired back her former waitress and brought in 2 more part-time workers just to keep up. 4 weeks after the boycott began, the economic impact was undeniable. Hotels in neighboring towns were booked solid with motorcycle riders every weekend. Gas stations reported record sales. The small grocery store had to increase orders by 50%. Other businesses on Main Street began to notice. The first to crack was Mike Torres at the barber shop, who quietly started serving biker customers who needed haircuts. "Nothing personal," he told Linda when she saw him cutting a rider's hair. "Business is business." Susan Parker at the flower shop followed a week later, creating motorcycle-themed arrangements that became surprisingly popular. What had started as a boycott was becoming an economic boom, and Linda was at the center of it. But not everyone was happy about the transformation. 2 months after the first big biker weekend, Donald Hayes confronted Linda outside the post office. "You're destroying this town's reputation. I'm bringing customers to this town. The wrong kind of customers. Customers who spend money and tip well. Customers who intimidate families." Linda looked around the bustling street. She saw bikers chatting with locals, families taking pictures with motorcycles, children asking Tyler to show them how engines worked. "They don't look intimidated to me." "Just wait. When the trouble starts, don't expect the council to bail you out." But the trouble Donald predicted never came. Instead, something unexpected happened. The community began to change. 3 months into what locals now called the biker boom, Millfield had transformed. Local kids became fascinated with the motorcycles, leading to impromptu bike shows in the town square. Elderly residents who'd initially been nervous discovered that many of the bikers were veterans who shared stories of military service. Mrs. Chen, who'd fled the café during Linda's first biker customers, returned one Saturday with her grandson, who was thrilled to meet Cole and hear his army stories. "I was wrong about them," she admitted to Linda. "They're just people who ride motorcycles." Business owners who joined the boycott began quietly asking Linda how they could attract biker customers too. The hardware store started stocking bike maintenance supplies. Even the town's small hotel put up a sign advertising motorcycle-friendly lodging. Betty Harrison was seen chatting with a group of female riders about the town's history, seemingly fascinated by their stories of the open road. 6 months after Linda first served the Raven MC, Millfield had transformed from a dying small town into a destination for motorcycle enthusiasts. Property values increased. New businesses opened to serve the steady stream of riders. The town council passed a new resolution, unanimously this time, declaring Millfield motorcycle-friendly and officially welcoming riders from all clubs and organizations. Linda hired 6 full-time employees and expanded the cafe into the empty storefront next door. Clark's Family Restaurant became known throughout the motorcycle community as the place where bikers were always welcome. But the real test of the community Linda had built came when she needed it most. On a cold Tuesday morning in November, 10 months after the boycott began, Linda received the phone call that every business owner dreads. Her mother, who lived in a nursing home 2 hours away, had suffered a stroke and wasn't expected to survive. Linda closed the cafe immediately and drove to be with her mother, leaving her staff to handle the restaurant. She spent 3 days at the hospital, holding her mother's hand and making funeral arrangements. When Linda finally returned to Millfield, exhausted and grieving, she found something that took her breath away. The cafe was not only still running, it was busier than ever. Janet and several other Raven MC members had organized shifts to help Linda's staff. Bikers from different clubs had volunteered to wait tables, cook food, and handle the cash register. Tyler had taken charge of the kitchen, coordinating with Linda's regular cook to keep everything running smoothly. "We heard about your mom," Janet said, embracing Linda as she walked through the door. "Nobody wanted you to worry about the restaurant." For 3 more days, while Linda arranged her mother's funeral and settled her affairs, the motorcycle community kept her business running. They didn't just help, they improved everything, deep cleaning the kitchen, organizing the storage room, and even painting the exterior walls. But the biggest surprise came on the day of Linda's mother's funeral. As the procession left the funeral home, Linda saw them. Hundreds of motorcycles lined the route to the cemetery, their riders standing at attention in a show of respect. Donald Hayes stood among them, his head bowed, having ridden his own motorcycle for the first time in 20 years to join the tribute. When Linda reopened officially the following Monday, she found a crowd waiting that included not just bikers, but longtime Millfield residents who'd come to understand what she'd known all along, that the measure of a person isn't what they wear or what they ride, but how they treat others when it matters most. Donald Hayes was among the customers, looking genuinely remorseful as he ordered his usual coffee and pie. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "A big one. We all make mistakes. I made more than a mistake. I tried to destroy your business because I was scared of people I didn't understand." He gestured toward Tyler, who was teaching a local teenager how to change oil in the parking lot. "That young man spent 2 hours fixing my grandson's bicycle yesterday. Wouldn't take a penny for it. Said he learned from the best about helping people." Linda looked around her packed restaurant, filled with bikers and locals eating together, sharing stories, and building the kind of community her father had always envisioned. The important thing is learning from them. Today, Clark's family restaurant is featured in motorcycle magazines as a must-stop destination for riders traveling through the Midwest. The walls are covered with patches from visiting clubs, photos of riders and their bikes, and thank you notes from people who found more than just good food in Linda's café. They found acceptance, respect, and the kind of warm welcome that reminds you why traveling the open road can lead to the best experiences of your life. The town of Millfield has embraced its identity as a motorcycle-friendly destination. The annual Rolling into Millfield rally draws thousands of riders every summer, bringing millions of dollars to the local economy. Tyler now owns his own motorcycle repair shop on Main Street, mentored by Cole and supported by the community that once would have rejected him. He still helps at the cafe during busy weekends, teaching local kids about engines and responsibility. But for Linda, the real victory isn't measured in dollars or customers. It's measured in the friendships formed across tables where strangers became family, and in the knowledge that standing up for what's right, even when it costs everything, has a way of coming back to you in the form of community stronger than anything you could have built alone. The little cafe that almost died from a boycott is now thriving because one woman refused to judge people by their appearance, and a community of riders refused to let that kindness go unrewarded.
Liked hearing this one? Hit that like button and subscribe to Hammer and Tales for more. Check out the next story on your screen. It's a good one. See you next time.